His tenure on the Tucson City Council was one of the longest in Tucson's history. He was never defeated in a political election. Progress and public service were the hallmarks of the Leal era on the Old Pueblo City Council. And now, from the Civic Council to the airwaves of Tucson, this is All Things Political with Steve Leal. Here's the host of All Things Political, Steve Leal.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Our guest today is Bill Risner, local attorney and activist. And John Brakey, an associate, will be joining us in, say, 15 minutes. Bill's come on we want to talk about the history of the Regional Transportation Authority, in particular, I guess, focusing on the ballot procedures, the meaning of some of the questions that have been raised, and some recent breakthroughs that maybe change the playing field on how that issue will be concluded. Bill, welcome very much.
Sure, yeah, nice to be here,
Good.
Steve.
So the Regional Transportation Authority has been around for, I don't know, what?
The election was in May of 2006.
And they'd been working on bringing it forward probably for 2 or 3 years prior to that. We know that there's some interesting things that are different between the one in Pima County and the one in Maricopa. The Regional Transportation Authority they created in Maricopa allows for weighted voting. The one in Pima County, strangely enough, does not, which gives South Tucson the same power at the table and Sahuarita the same power at the table as the city of Tucson. And city residents pay, I think, about $42 million out of the $54 million of revenues annually into the Regional Transportation Authority. Families in each ward of the city are contributing $7 million of disposable income to the Regional Transportation Authority. It's over the life of it, it's supposed to generate $2 billion, which is a whole lot of cash. So your first involvement in it, your first questioning of the results, the procedures, et cetera, started. When did that begin for you?
Well, I suppose it began in 2007, probably. What happened is the Democratic Party in Pima County had an election integrity committee that for a couple of years had been looking at computer elections and trying to increase the
safeguards,
the security. And as part of that process, in December 2006, we asked for the database from the county's election computer.
So that was just circumstantial that the party had this thing that they'd been looking at, and then at the same time this RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority thing happens, and so then this committee that was looking at the questions about election integrity in general started to look in particular at the processes and results of the RTA?
Yeah, that's sort of it. But really, our thing was computer voting, and we had a number of very skilled computer people and election people, and we wanted to look, and they wanted to look at the database.
Right.
And there's absolutely no reason they shouldn't have been able to get the database.
Absolutely.
And
because the whole, everybody around here talks about transparency in government.
Yeah. Well, so I ended up having to sue to get the database. And, in my estimate, the county probably spent $1 million keeping the database from us with no reason. And so we had a number of discussions where we would say, okay, there's something big that they don't want us to know. And what could it be? And the only thing we could come up with was the RTA.
Now, when the request was made for the database, I'm sure people made that request in just sort of a matter of fact, no big deal, this is America kind of way. And I'm sure people were kind of really taken back when the county said, oh, by the way, no.
Yeah, we were. Actually, it was kind of interesting. The county has, or Huckleberry has a guy named John Moffett that works for him. And Moffett was the designated guy to say no. And we had a meeting with our computer experts and him. And we said, okay, we've made a public records request. You've denied it. What's the reason? And John says, well, the reason is if you had the database, you would know that our one guy, computer operator, uses a certain way to code how the ballots are read, how candidates are coded. And incidentally, just to divert a little, this is really simple. He randomly will pick a number like this candidate will call 20. This one would be 30. This one would be 28. It's ridiculous. And you can change that any way you want. But he says, if you got the database, you would be able to figure out how this person codes things. And that would then enable the political party to hack an election in the future. Okay? So on the one level, it's absurd.
So you're saying we won't give it to you because we have to protect future elections?
Sure. And furthermore, the political party had gone through a process in 20 ways to get the county to increase security. We made them put a camera on the computer at all times, the election computer. We had them put all the wires so you could see them, all kinds of stuff. But nonetheless, he says, okay, even though you guys have done all those things, we're concerned about the security. So in this meeting, Mickey Donahoe, who's retired from the National Security Agency, hands some papers to John Moffett and says, are these the securities you're talking about? Are these the codes? And Moffett says, wow, yeah, these are the codes. Where'd you get them? Mickey says, well, I downloaded them from the Secretary of State's public website where Pima County had sent them. So at that point, they had no reason. So we said, okay, that's your reason. What's your other reason? Well, no, I'm just not going to let you have them. So then then we filed a lawsuit because here they are, and they had no reason. We spent, like I say, this lawsuit, my guess is it took them $1 million. They ended up at the end paying me $230,000, which was a small part of the fees that I put into I put into this thing. Then when we go to trial, and this is astonishing, after incredible litigation, we go to trial. John Moffett's on the witness stand. Mr. Moffett, what's the reason why you don't want to give the database to the Democratic Party? He said, well, here's my number one reason. If you had the database, then in a future election, if we gave you the database and this, of course, you would get the database after the canvass is approved by the Board of Supervisors,
right,
after everybody knows what all the numbers are. And after the Republicans get a copy of the database, the Democrats, the Libertarians, the Greens, he says the Democratic Party could then, because they would know the page layout and what font to use, could publish their own false results, which would call the election into question. I mean,
wow.
It is...
That's delusional.
It is delusional beyond belief because, political parties are volunteers. They're based on their reputation.
Right.
I mean, the real ballots would be there. Every other party would have different results. But you would be publishing something. I mean,
you'd find that out. You'd get caught doing that in a nanosecond.
It is beyond belief to work on a case for so long, to deal with these people, and then they just pop out with something that has no bearing to the real world, rationality, anything, and you just think like, have I stepped into some
Twilight Zone,
some zone here?
Right.
And when you're dealing with that kind of thinking, you're thinking, what's going on? And that's why it can't be anything else but the RTA.
Well, we're going to let our listeners pause and reflect on that contradiction because we've got to go to break, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, we are back. Our guest today, Bill Risner, attorney and community activist, who's been involved successfully for some time dealing with the election, about the origins of the Regional Transportation Authority. When we went to break, Bill, you were talking about Mr. Moffat's testimony on the stand, and he had switched to an argument basically asserting that we can't show you this because you could recopy it using a different font and show a different conclusion to the election, even though 5 other parties, different governments, all have copies, and it would be clear in 3 seconds that you had done that. So it was kind of a crazy argument that this fellow made on the witness stand.
Well, he had a problem. They didn't have a real argument.
Well, I guess when people don't have the facts and the truth on their side, people are known to just make it up.
They did the same thing. We asked.
What did the judge say to that, though? I guess he didn't.
No,
the judge didn't accept it. You won.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he says that. Judges, when it comes to the power structure, are pretty cautious fellows.
Big time.
So he said we could get, like part of the database, and then later there was enough pressure on the Board of Supervisors because of what it looked like they were hiding, that we got all the database from that election. Mm-hmm. It doesn't tell you a lot, but it's helpful. We learn that these guys regularly violate the law every election in an important way.
Can you specify some of those things that are violations that they routinely do?
Oh, sure. Half the ballots that come in are what we call early ballots.
Correct.
And they start counting those a week or two before the election. And it's illegal to print out what the vote totals are. So they aren't, even though they run them through the computer, they aren't supposed to print out who's winning and who's losing.
They do that?
They do that, and have done it every election. When we got the database, we found out that they were doing it all the time. Later, under oath, the guys that, for instance, the one computer operator's assistant for 4.5 years says, heck, we printed these things all the time and actually had a stamp that when we printed it out, we would stamp, unofficial returns, and it'd be on the table. There was testimony from all the employees there that, several of them that are Brad Nelson, the election director, would come in, get a copy, go back to his office. That was something they routinely did.
If I'm remembering right, is this one of the things they sent to an elected official in Oro Valley?
Well, there was an official in the town clerk in Oro Valley.
There you go.
Who was there for an election and wanted, before the polls closed, a copy of how the votes were going. And Robbie Evans Jr. Happened to be running the computer that time instead of the normal operator, and he refused. He says, it's against the law. I'm not going to do it. So
all right.
She says, well, the other guy always does it for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are some of the other violations that routinely, blithely go on in that office?
Well,
I know somebody took the disc home.
Yeah, here's
the election results home.
Steve, the election system that we have, it is very, very easy to cheat. And in fact, the database defense by the county, this is the defense. The defense was, it's really easy to cheat. And it's so easy to cheat that we can't let the Democratic Party get a copy of the database because maybe they'll figure out how to cheat, even though the party had protected the computer. But it's very easy. And one of the ways that it's easy to cheat is our election software system is built on a Microsoft Access base. So it's not well protected at all. So what you can do, for instance, and this is something that under oath, there's no question, our election one guy would be at the end of the day, while they're counting ballots during the election process, he makes a copy on a CD of the whatever the votes are that day. Then he goes home, and simply on the home computer, if he has Microsoft Access, that's all he needs, Microsoft Access, without any codes or anything, you can open up the
table.
Yeah, open it up, and that system has an audit log that is not separate from the data itself. So you can go in and make any changes you want. When you've made all those changes, then you can go to the audit log and delete from the audit log that you've done everything.
No footprints.
Right. So one of the things that when I looked at the RTA is they had counted 13,000 votes of early ballots, and then at the end of the day, they had backed up the computer, which is fine. And then the next morning, though, the computer operator comes in. 33 seconds later, he overwrites the day before's backup data. And to do that, there's a couple warnings. So this little thing comes up on the screen, says, hey, this file already exists. Are you sure you want to overwrite it? Yeah, and he's got to do this twice. And then it deletes all that data before, and then it puts in new data. Well, he hadn't counted any ballots in the last 33 seconds. So what's the point of that? We don't know, but one of the ways, there are a lot of ways to cheat. One of the ways is to, at home, when you open that up, or you could do it at the office, but let's say you do it at home, you take the, we talked before about how races are coded, because that's how the machine reads the things. So you just say, okay, yes votes has this code of maybe 15 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so we just change that with the no vote. We just change it. And so then you make one change, and you come back in the next morning, and the computer software will automatically change that for every precinct and read all the votes that way.
Wow.
So that's called a flip. So that, well, if you want to flip a race, I mean, that's a simple way to do it. But there are so many ways to cheat.
Now, I'm trying to remember. There's a computer board that the people that make the software or the voting systems have.
Yeah.
And did Pima County buy one? And were they the only county that's ever bought a board? Someone said that this allows them to change results. But maybe they didn't need that, because what you're saying, they had a way of changing the results without a board. I might be confused about this.
Oh no, they can
they can change the results already.
Yeah, they can change anything. One of the most amazing things we learned is there's a national group called Black Box Voting.
Right.
So before
out of Illinois or something, University of Chicago.
It's Bev Harris's group. I think she's from California. But in any event, they sent a warning to election outfits all across the country, to different counties and jurisdictions that were using the Diebold system, saying, here's a warning. There's a machine called a crop scanner that it's a read-write device, and it's sold in Minnesota. There's a little card that a company called Epson makes, a memory card, and this company sells it to farmers to use to know when to water their corn crops and stuff. And other than that use, the only other use is in the Diebold election system. That's the memory card that's used in precinct scanners to scan your ballot when it goes into the box. And so with this crop scanner machine, you can program the card to print false results.
Good grief.
And there's a movie called Hacking Democracy, a CBO thing, where a guy named Harry Hursty demonstrates precisely that. So they sent a warning out all across the country saying, we want to let you know that this crop scanner device can be used and memory cards can be programmed to print false results. So Pima County said, hey, that's cool.
Let's buy one?
Yeah, less than 2 weeks later, they bought one of those crop scanners. And then the computer operator testified under oath, yes, I tried it, and it wasn't even very hard. He says, with a little computer knowledge, you can program this thing, and sure enough, it prints false results.
Wow. So that's the board. That was what I was trying to remember, was that device.
Yeah.
So we got one Christmas special, 2 for the price of 1.
Exactly.
And they bought that before the RTA election?
Yes, yeah, that was bought before the RTA election.
So the committee had made some recommendations prior to that about, apparently the county used to have a rule that there had to be two people. Whoops, got to go to break. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, we are back. Our guest today, Bill Risner, attorney and citizen activist, and John Brakey, who've thankfully been looking at the election security issues around Pima County elections and what it meant not just to the RTA election, but unless these things are resolved, what it means for any future election. Before we went to break, Bill, we were talking about decreases in security that had happened. I think at one point the county procedures required that 2 people be in the computer room at any given time, and they changed that so only one had to be. And what was the other amazing apparently self-serving change they made? I don't remember.
Well, there were what I would call decreases in security,
right,
in the sense of people that weren't allowed in the room to watch what was going on, that were made just before the RTA election.
So just before the RTA election, they decreased security procedures, common sense, best practice types of procedures, and bought the special whoop-de-doo, now you see it, now you don't, card that allowed them to change election results that no other county, to our knowledge, in America had ever purchased.
Yeah, that would be my view. I view it as decreasing security. They would say they increase security because only their one guy, could be in the room. So,
and he was watching himself.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, they did have one guy working with him, and he was from Eastern Europe. He was not an American citizen. On February 1st, Richard Harding, by the way, worked there for many, many years, and he became a very good colleague of ours after he left, explaining the inside of what everything was going on. So we kept him in reserve for about a year. Mm-hmm. And he tells a story that on February 1st, Brad Nelson calls a meeting. This is February of 2006, and they've already had the crop scanner now for about 8 months and he says, okay, we're going to have some new policies here. Nobody can go in the election department but my girlfriend, which Mary was his girlfriend at that time, who worked for him, who was his chief of staff. The foreigner, which is Thomas Kavlicek, Bill, or something like that?
Callan Census
or
something.
And then it was Brian Crane. Okay. And then they started building this database, and they started building it in secret. And nobody could go in there and work on it because what he was doing was programming and learning how to do the memory cards while he was building the database. Because, that shows in the database. We can actually look in, and, they weren't too familiar with their own audit log. And we got the audit log before we got the databases. And when we got the databases, we can see exactly what they were doing inside.
Good grief.
Okay. Now, we cannot see that the numbers changing because when you reload a memory card for the second time, and by the way, that election night was very hectic. I was out in the field as an election integrity for the Democratic Party, going precinct to precinct, and we're finding machines breaking down, and they wouldn't communicate or they wouldn't function properly. And all those functions are generated off of a memory card, which is the size of a credit card. This is the kind of card I'm showing you right now, which the listeners can't see, but it's a credit card size. It goes into the crop scanner to be programmed, just like in that movie Hacking Democracy. And people who are interested, you can Google in video "hacking democracy Pima County," and you'll see the video that explains how the hack is done using the machine.
You know, if a Wall Street firm, a bank had the ability to change stock information to confuse clients, it'd be a conspiracy to defraud.
Yes.
I'm starting to wonder what's the difference.
Yeah, what is the difference?
What is the difference?
We got so much evidence that it's incredible. You know, Bill, thank God we got Bill Risner in this town. He is our DA because we have no DA in this state.
Right.
You know, you go to I went to the Attorney General and turns around and says, well, gee, I can't help you. I have to represent the Secretary of State. Then you go to the county attorney. Well, I represent the county. Well, who represents the people, Steve? Who?
Yeah, I'm sure that's not an accurate description of that.
Well, that's what they told me.
I know the county attorney, I think, also represents the people of Pima County. Otherwise, she would just be hired by the board and not elected by the people. Well, but anyway.
Well, in court, we kind of saw who she represented, who communicated. And but, you know, going back to it is that the data shows very clearly, and we're very excited about showing this. I mean, this is not like we've had one case. The Bill has done 4 cases. He's won 3, which was the records request, and then he goes to court after we got the databases. We got all this information. We're asking for prospective relief.
What have been the 3 cases up to now? We talked about the first one. Then the second one.
Well, no, actually, the first case. You know, Steve, we talked about the county illegally printing the vote tallies before the polls close.
Correct.
Okay. So one of the interesting things is to audit the early ballots, you sort of need to do that. So we, through our effort, and Ted Downing particularly was very influential in getting this through the legislature, was a procedure to be able to audit early ballots. And this procedure involves printing a subtotal of what the votes are at that point, then taking a stack of ballots, say 250 ballots, having the machine count those, then printing again what the totals are, and then that printing, though, is upside down, so no one can read it. And then and this is only done when political party observers are there. Only when observers are there. It's printed upside down. Nobody knows what the numbers are. The ballots and both of those reports are then put in an envelope with a seal and signed and so forth. Then after the election, the political parties say, take this a group of ballots and this one, and then go back and we'll hand count and see if the machine counted them right. Okay? So our political party observers from the Democratic Party kept accurate records of every time that was done because we knew these guys had been cheating in the past and this was important.
Good grief.
And then afterwards, we look at the audit log, and they printed a couple when nobody was there.
Oh,
See?
My God.
So then we said, okay, here's what happened. We said, okay, we had you put in a camera on the computer, so we want to look and see who was running that computer. They said, gee, we're awful busy. We can't do this. Come back later. I'm saying, we're awful busy. Stall, boom, 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 boom. Then later, okay, finally, they said, we're going to look. And, oh, darn.
It's blank.
Our computer only holds 20 days, and we were so busy we didn't get back to this till after 20 days, so we don't know who ran those reports or when. We said, okay, what'd you do with the reports? Well, unfortunately, they're in ballot boxes and they're locked up and no one can look at them, but that's where they all are, so don't worry. So we sued saying, hey,
we want to see them.
Want an order opening those boxes. And so they fought like a dog, but we won, and we got an order, and we opened the boxes, and every report that was done while our observers was there were in the boxes. But the ones where they cheated weren't in the boxes.
So they either didn't put them in the first place or
they cheated.
Removed them when they had to open them.
Yeah. Well,
Steve.
yeah, it was clear to us they cheated because, as I described that process, you always have to print two reports, one before and after. And one of the times there was one report. So it clearly couldn't have been part of this process. It was something where they wanted to know because they'd always wanted to know. And,
that information can be given to campaigns to help them shift their outreach to influence the people who haven't voted yet. It's an early warning system. Things aren't going good over in these 38 precincts. Do a lit drop. Do this. Do that. Right?
And we've seen that happen.
What?
We've seen it happen. Ted Downing's election, after he passed that law, they printed the election summary on a Saturday and illegally did it. No reports needed or anything. And then they turned right around that afternoon, a robocall from the Republican Party out of Maricopa, or Phoenix, the state party, hits him on a robocall accusing him of such hideous things. And us Democrats cannot support Ted Downing. He wants to raise the power prices. He wants to do this. He wants to do that. And the very, very end, it says, brought to you by the Republican Party.
I don't even think he had a Republican opponent.
Yeah,
they
didn't even have an opponent.
Just were knifing Ted.
Yeah, and they able to tip. I mean, can you imagine 9 days out before an election? I'm talking 9 days out.
So
on a 2006 the senatorial race, $29 million spent in a senatorial race. They knew who was going to win 9 days out. Can you imagine having a poll with 13,000 people on it?
Usually, a party, the media, the politician can tell from the early votes. They can generalize from those what the rest of it's going to be like.
Sure, very close.
Very close.
Best pollster
very,
in the country.
Very close. So the split on the results from the early voting in that election had him winning. I mean,
I don't know.
It would be interesting to see
the results.
It would be interesting to see if that was going well, but then it changed because of this robocall thing. Then that would strengthen the assumption that early results were showing him winning, and they had to figure out how to stop that. But anyway, so then the next case that you guys won
was the database case.
Was the database case. Oh, it was a break time. We'll be back for next quarter of an hour. Okay, we are back. Our guests today, Bill Risner and John Brakey, talking about the RTA election and what insights and contradictions are revealed in the Pima County electoral system. And it's also a problem for the rest of the country because the system's all over the place. Before we went to break, we were talking about the suit that involved the poll tape. Can you guys elaborate on that? Because this is really important.
Yeah. What happened is when the precinct closes at the end of election day, on top of the ballot box is the optical scanner that has the memory card in it, the one that can be programmed to print false results. But regardless, it prints out the results of what the votes were at that precinct for various candidates or various measures. Then and this is something that looks like a cash register tape. And then the election officials that are there from the parties sign their names to this official tape. And we notified actually the Attorney General's office, but we filed a lawsuit that we wanted to look at those tapes because even though the crop scanner can program it to print false results, if you're not careful, there are certain clues that can be on it that indicates it has been programmed to print false results.
Wow.
And we wanted to look at the tapes. And these things are absolutely public records. They're signed.
It shows you whether the forgers were any good.
Exactly. And so the county, of course, totally resisted this thing. They've spent, recently like $280,000 defending these new sets of lawsuits. But eventually we get a court order, and eventually we get the tapes, and then I'll let John talk about that because he was down there with them, copied it, and he's looked at them, and he knows what they show.
Well, first off, just about the tapes, is that how we got the tapes is that Bill said they're not going to give them to us until we go ahead and make the case. And Bill all of a sudden says, okay, let's file a public records request with the city. And we asked for their tapes for that last election. We got them. And they were all there. They all looked perfect.
Yeah, because I remember the county said they weren't allowed to, and the city said, no, we'll give you ours.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
Because we wanted to make a precedence in showing that.
Yes.
So now the judge had no choice to rule our way.
Right,
This was not a favorable judge.
Right.
So we got the poll tapes. We went down there. We pulled them out, and they're supposed to be in this clear plastic envelope called the official returns envelope. It's a clear plastic envelope, and this is the only envelope that election officials cannot open. In fact, on the Indian reservation, I was talking to an election official, and I says, do you put your poll tape, tally tape in the envelope? And he says, well, gee, John, why do you think we call it the official returns envelope? Without it, it's no returns. Well, I want you to know in Pima County, they didn't put them in there, supposedly. Okay, so we go down there, we ask to look. They go in the envelope. Nope, they can't find them. Okay, so then we go through records, and the time we get done, 44% of them are missing. And what few we
44% of the election results had disappeared?
The official poll tapes, the tally tapes were missing. But even worse, the few that were there did not match the database.
God.
Okay, meaning that we got two different databases, this is not the first time we've had databases in this case disappear. Okay, I mean, that's another story by itself. And so it's just incredible, and especially it's the ones that I'm looking for.
I'm glad these people aren't in charge of the emergency
unit. Yeah, but disturbing is that the official returns envelope should have a copy of that tape in it, and they removed it. Why would you remove it? Because you don't want to leave evidence behind.
Well, and it's a trail that you can follow to the facts about what actually happened.
Right, and it protects the honest election people. You want to keep like the law states.
Wow.
And by the way, Maricopa is bad or worse than we are in elections.
You are kidding.
We caught Maricopa with a computer guy hooked up with a wire into the central tabulator on election day, and then we find out that this same guy, Steve, this one guy in Maricopa also does another county in the United States for Sequoia voting systems, Cook County, Chicago.
Imagine most honest, straightforward county.
I mean,
in
this
the
problem is just incredible. And so, but the poll tapes were very revealing. It backed up even more, which Bill has taught us about badges of fraud. And there's so many badges of fraud in this case. The lying, the deceit.
It's not just we've got to protect Americans from voter suppression.
Yes.
It's not just if you don't like what's going on, we won't let you protest in the streets. We want to keep you in the hallway that leads you to a voting machine that we can. So no matter what, we're going to mess with the results. Be either keeping other people from voting, other people from protesting, or if all else fails,
we'll debolt you.
We'll just mess with the facts.
Yes.
And change things.
And that's how easy it is. We've lost our way. It's a sad situation.
So the judge agreed with you on, or no, what happened next when you demanded the polling tape? He said yes. And then you got to it and the stuff was all missing.
Yeah.
And then what?
Nothing. That's the end of it.
Oh my God.
And of course, just before we got the poll tapes, the judge dismissed our case and Bill had to go do an appeal. And
who was the judge?
That was Judge Remington.
Which one?
The one that was on the case of prospective relief case. Harrington. Because, basically you collect all this. The first three cases, what are they? They're about records request and gathering the information and the proofs.
Right.
Now we got the proofs. We go into court and the judge basically says, gee, what am I supposed to do if you guys prove this thing is stolen? We got video of, and first off, I want you to know, these aren't county attorneys no more. After Bill kicked them pretty good in the database and got the database, they said, we're in trouble. Let's go out and get the two biggest firms in southern Arizona to represent the county and the treasurer. And they get Deacon C.D. McDonald and what was the other firm?
It was the Gabroy firm.
Yeah.
The
hundreds of thousands of dollars getting poured out there.
John,
they're protecting $2 billion and other future possibilities.
Yes.
The case that's still going, and the case that was initially in front of Judge Harrington. What happened there is that the Democratic Party, unfortunately the Libertarian Party, claimed that that there was massive evidence that the RTA was a fraudulent election.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's easy to cheat, then what we're really concerned about is the next election. What this lawsuit is all about is the right to cheat in the future.
Right.
And what the judge says was, look, the legislature has said that you can challenge and contest an election if you do it within 5 days. If it's on the 6th day and you have complete proof and the computer operator prays to Jesus and comes in and says, I did it.
Well, it's like the statute of limitations on child abuse in Penn State have expired. Too bad.
Yeah, so it's 5 days. So the real trick and the real concern, I mean, if somebody's listening and says, gee, we love the RTA and we love roads and it's great, the real deal is any election can be rigged here, and especially county elections, because there is no auditing anywhere, anytime, any place for the county elections. They can all be rigged, and they can never, ever be challenged.
And if you want something, they'll stiff arm you and make you fight till the cows come home.
Well,
so much for transparency.
But it doesn't matter what you find later.
Right.
And you can't get it in advance.
No, but I'm just saying it makes citizens even more cynical and apathetic because they set it up to where it's hard to fight them.
Well, sure. I don't know why you'd be cynical. You just be aware that that simply you have no idea who wins any county election,
other than what they tell you,
unless you take it on faith. Unless you simply take your brain that's been trained to in religion to believe something on faith and apply that to elections and ignore the history of America and everything you know.
Trust these people that want your money to give to their friends so they can become wealthier as real estate speculators or whatever. So that you're going back to court here in the near future.
We're there.
To do now. What's at hand?
Well, what we want to do is to have the judge issue some orders, and so that they won't be able to cheat in the future. It's really the big part of it's fairly simple with graphic scanning. There are high-speed scanners and systems that can essentially take a photograph of every ballot after it's counted. That stuff can be publicly available. There are softwares to count it. So anybody or any political party could then count the ballots, and they can't cheat because these actual ballots are there.
We'll play it to the end. So who's bought those systems in the country? Has anybody bought those to create more security for themselves?
Hilbert, the county in California that has it, and they're doing it. And we're working with two different groups that are promoting it. We have no acts with anybody. We just want a good, honest system. Chain of custody is everything.
Chain of custody,
that means those ballots, when they're counted at the precinct, the graphic scanning could be done there on certain precincts, uploaded right away to the internet, that anybody can count them. They could download them and run them through their own computer with software that's being developed.
When did you go to court on this?
Well, it just sort of opened up now. We won a trial in the summer so that we can get relief in time to protect the public for the 2012 election.
Thank you.
And we're demanding a jury trial.
All right. That's a good idea.
Because they like to stipulate and bury things.
All right. We're getting the wave here. We got to break off. But sounds like we're going to be back here to see what happens next. Thank you very, very much, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
KJLL, South Tucson.